Okay, so let's see here. What I want to do is just play around with a bunch of different group bys and give some interpretations, because I realize that's something that may not be incredibly obvious to everybody. So I want to show you something. We did before, we did group by city, and we also did that in brand. And we just said, look at the average quantities. So we put quantity here. We wanted it to return the average with the mean. We hit Control Enter, run that, and this is what we did before. I just want to see what would happen. Just curious. Look at this. This was by city brand. What if we did just reverse the order of these? What about by brand city? This is kind of the interesting thing. You can play around with these codes and just experiment and say, well, what if? Let's see what happens. Let's run. Oh, look at this. This would tell me now by brand where which city they have their most average sales. Now again, the difficulty, or the thing that you should, now this is the thing you need to be careful of, because we're looking across cities. Remember that cities could be large and they could be small, and so comparison of this metric actually might not be quite as that might lead you to more biased results actually, because if I look at within I mean, but I guess it kind of depends. It depends on what we're really interested in answering. I mean, it's hard to say that this would be like a measure of popularity. I mean, we could not say, for example, that adult cola is so look, what's the biggest value here for adult cola? Their biggest market, or the biggest. So the shop, the place where the shop has the biggest selling shop is in Petra. So in Petra, on average, adult cola they sell more, but that does not mean necessarily that in Petra adult cola is more popular than it is in Larissa. Just because. Do you see in Larissa it's 21, in Petra it's 37. But we can't say adult cola is more popular in Petra than Larissa. Why? Because popularity has a lot to do with taste. But when we just are comparing these numbers, we also have that there could be like different sized cities, right? So we have to be very careful in the interpretation. Now what I can do is look at the market. So looking at by brand, I can evaluate the markets of each one. So what if I just did sum? I think sum is better because sum is actually adding up everything. It's kind of interesting. We get Athens has the most, followed by Petra. Kind of interesting. So you can kind of see where actually this does tell you kind of more. This would be interesting to know if you're. I guess when would you use something like this? Well, maybe you want to know something about how to organize your supply chains. Then you want to know how many trucks should I have lined up for one or the other. This would be like a good metric, right? Something like this. So they'll tell you different things. What about if I added more complexity? I also had container, right? I could do brand, container. So brands. So this is adult cola, cans, glass, plastic are the containers in the cities. So again, this is like looking at within the brand container and looking at across the cities here. And so you can really just look and think about if you change the order of things, you're looking at quite different statistics. So if I did city first, then I'd be looking within city and brands, and I'd be looking across containers. So think about this. So within city, brand, across containers. I guess I could start to talk about what kinds of containers are going to be. I guess the highest sold within each of these brands. I could look at something like this. So I could look for adult cola. it's most popular to have a can. In Athens, again, it's a can. They're all fairly similar, right? So you see that Lemon Boost, again, Lemon Boost within Athens, they prefer it in a can. And then what about within these cities? So is this all the same? This is just amazing to me. There's so much, it almost feels like it's maybe a manufactured data set. I never see a data set that has such continuity. Is there really this much continuity in Greek preferences? Lemon Boost is a can within this other city. Is there any place that doesn't have a can? I mean, it looks like the can is always the most popular. You see? Orange Power has a can. It's always the can, isn't it? Do Greeks really just love the can? I guess so. Looks like it's always the can. Look at that. It's just shocking. That's really what you're doing when you're doing these kind of statistics and playing with different averages. It's kind of fun just to look around and just toy around with these, flip things around and then interpret. So again, I looked at within city and brand, and I looked at the different types of containers. You could do something like this. I could also look at, let's look at the average price. So we know it's that they have a can. Let's look at price. And instead of sum, it doesn't make sense to sum to add up prices. Let's do average prices and look and see which is cheapest on average. So cola is cheapest out of the can. Okay. These are cheapest out of the can. Is it really a matter of the material though? I'm not exactly 100% sure if that's the case, because these also, so remember we also had size, and these may be of distinctly different sizes. And so we could also have a size preference that's going on here. So you have to always think and just question what's going on. Does that make sense? Like I looked at can, glass, and plastic, and we see that can is always like has the highest quantities within each city and brand. It's always the can. But then also we see here that it's always, when I look at price by container, these have the lowest price. I mean, quite substantially lower. So it makes me sort of inclined to wonder if we are just looking, maybe the size of the container is different between cans, glasses, and plastic, and maybe the size has something to do with it. It looks like it's always cheaper, quite cheaper by the can. So is it a price preference? Is it a container preference? Is it a size preference? These things aren't exactly clear. And I kind of forgot exactly what was in my data set. So if I go down to line 2, and I just go df head, what it'll do is it's going to run line 1, but because I'm not printing it, it's not going to show up. It's only going to show up, line 2 is the only thing that's going to show up. So I'm just going to look, what else did I have in here? Capacity, right? So let's go container, let's do this capacity. Capacity. And let's look at this. Okay. Okay, this 330 mil, and I had price here. Remember the lowest was the can with the, 330 mils. And again, 330 mils, it's got the lowest price. It's got to be that this can is 330 mils. And so we have some kind of a price. It's kind of interesting now. I want you to think about quantity here. So quantity we have in terms of number of units, but we also have quantity in terms of pure milliliters. So quantity is actually a little bit different here too, because we have a variable quantity. If I go, like, look at this. df head, oops. Like we have a variable quantity. We also have capacity. So quantity is like a number of units, a number of 1.5 liters. What I'm telling you is we also have quantity in terms of just like the most pure measure of quantity might also be just in terms of pure liters or pure milliliters, however you want to work that. That's kind of interesting. We might need to look at that a little bit more in detail. I think that's worthy to explore. This is kind of interesting stuff here. What we're finding is that there's this preference for smaller size cans that are cheaper. And how much of that is a price point issue and how much of that is something else? That's something we're just uncovering more questions. And you see that that just by looking and loading and talking about different types of averages, what we're doing is we're learning more about what's going on with this data set. And so this is what we've been doing is what I call just playing with the data. I always do this, just play with it, twist it around, look at it in different ways, be curious, look for patterns, look for like differences, look for strange oddities, look for things that are very strongly, very strong patterns. There's some very strong patterns in this data set that we've already identified. And a lot of times those things end up being the biggest drivers of what's going on. A lot of times it's like the big sort of wave of the motion in the data actually ends up being fairly like the dominating force of things, and maybe that can help us just dig in and be more curious and learn more. And opens up the door to more questions about like what's going on, and helps us to understand what's happening here with the cola market in Greece. I mean, I'm very, very shocked at, if this is a real data set, I'm very shocked at just how consistent it actually is. It's just amazing that between cities we found the same patterns, we found the same stuff going on. It's just very strange. So normally data is very messy, doesn't have that strong of patterns. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to show you again some more interpretation.